This story happened a few years back, when my friend Alex and I decided to go on a spontaneous camping trip. We were young, maybe early 20s, and thought we were invincible. Instead of heading to a designated campsite, we wanted a real adventure. We pulled up a map, found a huge patch of green that was labeled as State Forest Land, and just pointed to a random spot deep inside. That was our destination, a tiny, unnamed lake miles from any road. The drive itself was an ordeal. The paved road turned to gravel, then to a dirt track, and finally, it just disappeared into the trees. We parked the car, grabbed our heavy packs, and started hiking. The first few hours were great. The air was clean, the scenery was beautiful, and we were high on the freedom of it all. But as the sun started to dip lower, the woods began to feel different. The trees seemed to press in on us, and every snapped twig sounded like a footstep. We finally reached the lake, just as dusk was settling in. It was eerily beautiful. The water was like black glass, perfectly still, reflecting the bruised purple and orange sky. But it was the silence that got to me. Not a peaceful silence, but a heavy, expectant one. There were no crickets, no frogs, no birdsong. It felt like the whole forest was holding its breath. We quickly set up our small tent near the water's edge and got a fire going. The crackling flames pushed back the oppressive darkness, and for a while, we felt safe again. We cooked some hot dogs, told a few stupid jokes, and tried to ignore the growing unease. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It felt like we were being watched. I kept glancing over my shoulder into the blackness beyond the firelight, expecting to see a pair of eyes staring back. Alex felt it too. He was quieter than usual, his eyes constantly scanning the tree line. Around 10 o'clock, he just stood up and said, "I'm turning in." He crawled into the tent without another word, leaving me alone by the fire. I stayed up for another hour, feeding the flames, my heart pounding in my chest. The silence was deafening. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with this place. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I doused the fire and scrambled into the tent, zipping it up tight. Alex was already asleep, or pretending to be. I lay there in the dark, my ears straining, listening to the sound of my own breathing. That's when I heard it. A whisper. It was faint at first, like the wind rustling leaves, but it wasn't the wind. It was a voice, and it was coming from right outside our tent. I couldn't make out the words. It was just a low, guttural murmur. I froze, every muscle in my body tensed. I reached over and shook Alex. "Alex!" I hissed. "Wake up! Do you hear that?" He sat bolt upright. His eyes were wide in the darkness. He nodded slowly. The whispering continued, circling our tent. It wasn't one voice. It was multiple voices, all murmuring at once, their tones low and menacing. It sounded like they were having a conversation, just inches from the thin nylon wall that separated us from them. Then, we heard footsteps. Not the heavy tread of an animal, but the light, shuffling steps of several people walking barefoot on the forest floor. They circled the tent, over and over. The whispering grew louder. It felt like they were arguing about something. My blood ran cold. Who would be out here, in the middle of nowhere, with no gear, no lights? Suddenly, a hand pressed against the side of the tent, right next to my head. I could see the silhouette of the fingers and palm against the thin fabric. I let out a small, string-led yelp and scrambled back, pressing myself against Alex. He had his pocket knife out, the small blade looking pathetic in the gloom. The hand slid slowly down the side of the tent and was gone. The whispering stopped. The footsteps stopped. The silence that followed was somehow even more terrifying. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, huddled together, barely breathing, waiting. Just as I started to think maybe they were gone, the tent zipper began to move. It was slow, a single, deliberate asterisk. ZZZZZ, IP, asterisk sound, as someone on the outside pulled it down, inch by inch. Alex and I were paralyzed with fear. We just watched as the small gap in the zipper grew larger. We were trapped. There was nowhere to run. The zipper stopped about a foot from the bottom. An opening. We waited for a face to appear, for a hand to reach in. But nothing happened. There was just that dark opening, a gateway to the pitch-black forest outside, and the heavy, suffocating silence returned. We didn't sleep a wink. We just sat there, staring at that open flap, Nifa, Inan, until the first gray light of dawn started to filter through the trees. As soon as it was light enough to see, we exploded out of the tent. There was no one there, no footprints around the tent, which was impossible given the soft, damped ground. No sign that anyone had been there at all, except for the partially unzipped tent door. We didn't even bother packing up properly. We just stuffed everything into our bags, abandoned the tent, and ran. We didn't stop running until we got back to the car. We threw our gear in the back, jumped in, and peeled out of there, not looking back. We drove for an hour in complete silence before either of us said a word. "What was that?" I finally asked, my voice shaking. Alex just shook his head, his face pale. "I don't know," he said, "and I don't ever want to find out." We never went back to that forest. I've tried to look up that lake since, tried to find any local legends or stories about that area, but I've found nothing. It's like that place doesn't exist on any record, except in my own nightmares. Sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone in the quiet, I can still hear those whispers. And I know, deep in my bones, that we were not welcome there. We interrupted something ancient and malevolent, and we were lucky to get away with our lives. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you have any similar experiences, I'd love to read them in the comments below. Stay safe out there, and maybe stick to the designated campsites. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more true scary stories. See you next time.